Welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to firstly thank the organizers for inviting all of us for this wonderful event. It's my first visit to the Kasoli Lit Fest, and it's a great honor to be over here and to be sharing stories and listening to stories and ideas and talking to a lot of you over here. Today's session is something that interests me personally very greatly. It's a session on the role of women and some of the finest minds in the Indian Space Research Organization. It's a story that has been mentioned only passingly and certainly not mentioned enough. But what Mini Ved has done with her book, which I actually have with me over here, The Magnificent Women and Their Flying Machines, is bring out the wonderful stories of not one or two, but several women at the Indian Space Research Organization who've been involved in some of the most mesmerizing engineering and scientific projects that we have in India. And in as much as we speak about their role in the science that they are trained in, and the science and the engineering that they are a part of, I find it particularly fascinating that there are stories of how they balance their lives with their mission inside ISRO. The Indian Space Research Organization is a unique organization. It's a very Indian organization. Their cultures, their value systems, their beliefs, their way of functioning is quote unquote just like us. And yet the cutting edge science that they embark on is something that we as a nation certainly feel very proud about. But there are certain very uniquely Indian aspects. Jugaad, in terms of engineering, in terms of technology, a very strong belief in our value system, a very strong sense of patriotism, of working towards a national cause, a very strong belief among many in our culture, by which I mean classical forms of dance. We've had a former chairman of ISRO being a wonderful classical dancer himself. In fact, he led the Chandrayaan, the Mangalyaan mission as well. And so that's what ISRO in a nutshell is all about. But what we are specifically going to be talking about over here is the role of these women. Now, the role of women in ISRO has also come to the fore in this latest Chandrayaan mission. Chandrayaan 2, it didn't end up being 100% success. But again, the fact that you had women scientists and engineers being involved in the most critical aspects of this mission indicates how there is no discrimination within this Indian organization which strives for excellence. In fact, when Mini and I were actually speaking about this, and before we started talking about how we would do this discussion, the point I mentioned to her was, I personally find it difficult to sometimes say that, look, here is an organization where women have been allowed to succeed, because I come from an organization where for 24 years I've had women bosses, where 65% of people and crew members in NDTV have been women. So I've always been surrounded by women achievers. But it's important for people like me also to take a step back and reflect on the fact that women have been denied opportunities in so many areas. Not so in ISRO, where they are accepted and where they are encouraged, not because of their sex, but because of their ability. And I think that ability is what we want to speak about. We are also very fortunate to have Satya Saran with us. She's an author. and the former editor of Femina. And I think her views on the role of women, the challenges that women face in several areas, the fact that we hardly ever associate women in India with the higher sciences or engineering is something that we really need to get over and certainly base our current understanding on the facts. And many of those facts are in this wonderful book. So Mini, my question to you first. ISRO never highlighted the role of these women at the onset. It was a lot of journalists, people like you, who actually dug through and found this. How did you come across this story?
Well, when the mission happened, I have a very vague recollection of that iconic photograph of the women in the saris and the Kanjivaram saris and gajra in their hair. But that later on, the women scientists told me that they were administrative staff, not really the scientists, which people didn't know. But nevertheless, the pride in their organization is still valid. So I only had a hazy kind of recollection of that. Then 2 years later, I was attending a Indian Women's Network conference of the CII, where the three of the ISRO Mangalyaan women were slated speakers. And they spoke for about 40 minutes, and had it not been for the lunch break, they would have continued a lot longer. They spoke so well, and they spoke in such a mesmerizing way that I thought there's a germ of a book there. And then later on, I met them and asked them whether I could write the book, and that's how it began. But really, one of the things that I think it was Ritu who said it, and now she is mission director of Chandrayaan 2. She said, we balance our lives, what you said about family and work. So in the daytime, we worked on the mission, and in the night also we worked on the mission. In between, we looked after our children and our families, and then we also sent a rocket to space. So, the way in which they said it was, absolutely matter of fact, as if it wasn't a very big thing that they'd done, taking it in their stride, modest, conservative, unassuming people, and yet, the science, the work that they do is so fantastic. And at the end of the day, it's really the work that counts. It's the work that, sets them apart. And to answer your earlier question, your earlier comment, in NDTV, the numbers are, as you said, are huge. But in ISRO, despite the fact that the Mangalyaan women have been given very important roles, and Chandrayaan 2 is again led by Ritu and Vanita, project director also Vanita, but the numbers are less. It's less than 20%, the total number of women, and for scientists and researchers, it's about less than 18% even. No woman has been ahead of a ISRO center. No ISRO chairperson has ever been a woman. So there are a lot of gaps still. But the fact is that success stories like the Mangalyaan women and Chandrayaan, even if it's not a success, the fact that you had a women-led mission to the moon is unheard of anywhere in the world.
And it's quite possible that we may end up, and very likely will at some stage, end up having a woman Vyomnaut, an Indian astronaut. We refer to them as Vyomnauts.
Yep.
That's the term which ISRO is. It's very much in the cards.
Absolutely.
So Satya, let me just ask you to come in over here. The fact that we've got women in such, I'll just pass the mic on to you. The fact that we've got women achievers, extraordinary achievers. As a former editor of Femina for so many years, did you ever think that you would be on a panel in a discussion where we are talking about the role of women, not one or two, but quite a few, in the high sciences and engineering in an Indian organization?
Well, I don't see any surprise in that, because yes, it's amazing, it's fabulous. I was very proud when I was watching Chandrayaan 2 on television and seeing all those women there, and then I read Mini's book. But to go beyond that, well, it's great that these women are doing what they're doing and where they're doing, but I think the real success of women in a patriarchal setup like ours has been over the centuries is in the little unknown women that I have been meeting. They are women like us, women who haven't had our opportunities and yet created those opportunities, women who suddenly had to deal with the death of a husband, or a husband being laid off, and had to still get those children to school, still put the roti on the table, and started to find ways to do things.
Right.
You know, and I think I have stories to tell you, but this is mini session. So we'll
And there's so many fantastic stories here.
yes, so let's
Before
get back to Mini.
I just come back to Mini, I thought we'd put the Mangalyaan mission in perspective first, because we may have forgotten about it in our madness about Chandrayaan. I think we all went, and I certainly did, overboard on the Chandrayaan and Chandrayaan 2 mission. But Mangalyaan was exemplary. Now, here's what a NASA scientist said. The Mangalyaan mission to put India's satellite, India's Mangalyaan probe around on an orbit of the moon was equivalent of Mars, was equivalent of, and I quote, targeting something 650 million kilometers away with an error band of 50 kilometers. It was the equivalent of hitting a golf ball from Bengaluru into a bucket kept in Los Angeles while the bucket was moving. This was the mission which we actually did. It was this difficult. These were the calculations which were involved. Because we in India don't have a rocket to power, a probe to Mars, which would go there in one shot. So what we had to do, and Mini would tell you about the science over here, is actually slingshot our probe around the Earth for an extended period of time, raise its altitude vis-a-vis the Earth, and then at the exact precise time, sling it in the direction of the moon, where it was actually almost a year before they got around to the business of restarting its engines. And this was a moment of great terror. Would the engines, after so many months, in the temperatures of space, actually restart? And then they restarted it, and they had to decelerate. Otherwise, they would bounce off the atmosphere of Mars. And to get it all right, and to end up putting Mangalyaan into an orbit of the moon and sending back those incredible pictures of Mars, I beg your pardon, was absolutely, absolutely incredible science and engineering, and we did it, and these women did as well. So let's talk about a few of these women. Nandini Harinath, Ritu Karidhal, Momita Datta, Meenal Sampath, you've written about them. Tell us tomorrow during the Kargil session, women who've been to combat as helicopter pilots. We've got women scientists, we've had women missile engineers.
Yeah.
We still, and I think we in the media often make this mistake of, using terms like India's missile woman or India's the women in the Mangalyaan mission. They, at one level, did you come across scenarios where they felt that they were being looked at upon just for their sex alone, not for their achievement?
Not inside ISRO, outside ISRO. Inside ISRO, it's true, they are treated on merit. For instance, it was made mission director because of her work, not because of, she's certainly not in the hierarchy, she wasn't, as high. But as far as numbers and the hierarchy goes in ISRO, they do follow a protocol. So you cannot jump. So when I asked them about why are the numbers so less, they said, well, 35 years ago, less number of women joined ISRO. So the pool was less and they will have to put in those years, and only then you will find, like, they were all pretty confident in 10 years there would be a woman heading ISRO, or at least heading a center director, So
And their growth in the organization was based entirely on their ability and their achievement.
Totally. That is what I asked the project director also. I said, did they have subordinate roles? He said, no. Are you kidding? They were all in, they performed their roles with absolute accuracy and precision.
So tell us a few more stories of some of these women achievers in ISRO. Well, what strikes you right now?
Let's see. Nandini, again you're talking about Jugaad, and she would see, I'm just picking some of the family oriented stories because these are the stories which lend the human touch in the book also. Yeah. Because the science, people know the science. It's how the Mars orbiter entered the Mars orbit, and that those final, it was a tense time. And in fact, one of the artists said, scientist said, it was like the final tali that you tie, the Mangal Sutra. And Ritu said, even if I think of that moment now, I get goosebumps. But it's really the family stories which touch me. So, for instance, Nandini said, at a critical juncture during the Mars mission, they were working late till about 3 o'clock because the chairman was there and the people were there, and there was a problem with the orbiter. So they were working late till 3, and she said, my younger daughter, who was in class 7 at that time, she had a PTA meeting the next day. So she said, I called her up and said, you please, ask your teacher to push it to the afternoon. So that girl is very nonchalant. She went to her teacher and said, oh, my mother won't come today because she's working on the Mars mission, so she'll come in the afternoon. So the teacher was so surprised, no, it's fine, don't disturb your mother.
She doesn't need to come.
The Mars mission is way more important
than
a PTA meeting. Yeah.
Right.
So it's like that. And then even when she was, her older daughter was younger, they all call their, their family, like whether it's in-laws or parents or husbands, support system. So just like the missions have a ground support. So they said, our bosses would say, so have you called your support system? So sometimes the support system fails. If the mother-in-law is in Hyderabad and can't make it, so what do you do? So she carried, that time her elder daughter was 4 years old. So she took her with her to the control room. Yeah. She was mission director for project director for a program. And she said, on the way, I was explaining to my daughter that, so this is what Mama is going to do. And she said, so we will send up a satellite and then we will get information from the satellite. So the daughter said, oh, so then if you're going to do that in the sky, are we going to go to the terrace? Are we going to, sort of look at it there? And she went to ISTRAC and sat there, and she was so fascinated by all the stuff that she didn't go to sleep and kept awake till 1 o'clock, and then went on for the next 4 days just imitating the commands that she'd heard there, Mission MD and stuff like that. So these are different stories, and I met the children also, children and families, husband of Ritu Karidhar, and he also said something as a real feminist statement. He said, today I'm known as Ritu's husband. My identity comes from my wife, which I thought was such a big thing to say. Is wonderful. So these are the stories that stay. The men clapped. Oh, okay. That's good.
So how difficult was it for many of these women to actually get into ISRO or select engineering or aeronautical design as areas of study earlier on? It's still a problem.
Yeah, the older women, like, the ones who are almost at the top or end of their career, say 50 plus, they said that many of them fought with their fathers, and their fathers. There was one lady who, I won't take her name, but a very senior scientist now. She said, my parents had planned my whole life for me. They said, why do you want to go to Chennai to do your engineering? You can finish your BSc here, and then you get a job nearby, near our village, and then, we'll find you a suitable boy, and you can get married, and then we'll be there to look after your children when the children come. So they planned out her whole life. And she said, no, I'm going to go to Chennai. And she went there. And I think 20 years later, they would have been very proud, because a lot of press and people came to their house and said, your daughter is that's RISAT 1. She was the project director, the first woman project director. So good for her that she fought with her father. So the older women, then yes, they did have issues. But the newer lot, no. The newer lot.
And this is an interesting thing which we haven't discussed, and you have it in your book as well. RISAT 1 has enormous strategic importance for India. It's not just something which takes pretty pictures. It takes very pretty pictures of places which others don't want to provide us pictures with. We were actually counting on RISAT to provide us with decent quality images of Balakot. That didn't happen for various reasons. But the point I'm asking is that these women are involved profoundly with India's security and its engineering.
Yep. Absolutely.
And as is ISRO.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did they talk about this?
No.
You must have asked them.
I did ask them, and I asked them a lot of other stuff as well. But at the end of the day, they are serving scientists in an organization which is a government organization, which is highly hierarchical, and also, if I may use the word, secretive. You don't actually get access to ISRO. It's very hard. It took me 4.5 months to just get permission. And even when you go inside to interview the women, you only get to you only get to meet the women they want you to meet. It's not that you can say, okay, I picked the people that I want to meet. It's very lucky for me that I was allowed to meet all the Mangalyaan women, or most of the women. I didn't meet the main tracking ladies. And then in SAC Ahmedabad, which is the Space Application Center, the director was a very forthcoming person, shall we say. He said, good, the Mars mission is good, but that is like, Shah Rukh Khan ki film aap chalao to, story ki kya zarurat hai? But there are lots of other women here in SAC ISRO who are doing very good work, and why don't you meet them? So I met 13 more women other than the Mangalyaan women, and they were very, very...
Were they forthright, or were their answers prepared and practiced?
No. Well, I'm a journalist, so asking supplementaries is my job. But beyond that point, they wouldn't. If you push them, it wouldn't come through. But it's from the things, as I said, the things that they don't say, or words that they use, like, so very thankful for our family support, and so words like allow. So I used to work late. My husband allowed me to work late, and my mother-in-law never objected to my erratic timings. So these kind of things which I've kind of drawn a picture, but otherwise they will not sort of divulge.
Satya, you want to jump in with anything that you want to ask, or any comment that you have?
I think I was inspired when I was reading your book about how rooted these women are to the ground. They don't believe they have done something extraordinary. They've just taken it as a matter of course. We're doing a job, we're doing it well. That's what we are women about. That's what women are all about. There's no wearing feathers in your cap and being a peacock about it. And also they were not ashamed of talking about family. Now I'm telling you this because I know a business journalist whose job now is to go around talking to CEOs about why they do what they do, how they do, and what is the surrounding family around them, and do their wives work, do their children look up to them. And they say the men clam up when you ask about family. They say, no, that is family. As if they have a different identity here and a different identity. Now, women are more holistic. And they realize that yes, we are mothers, we are wives, we are daughters, we are sisters, and we are also in the workplace. Yeah, that is what inspired me, and I thought that was the most important point each of them brought out without any posturing. Yeah, it was just there.
No posturing at all?
Yeah, absolutely. There wasn't any posturing. They took the gender tag really lightly, as I've kind of written in the book also.
Was there a creche in any of these places?
Yes, in fact, the creche story is very very interesting. I met a lady who was uh, almost at the retirement stage in SAC Ahmedabad, and she was talking about the early struggles. So she said a bunch of us went to our senior and we said we have small children, and Dushito took her kid to office because there was, at that day there was no help. And the lady, her boss, who was a woman, said that, yeah, well, we don't have money, so we'll give you a 6-month trial. If it works out, fine. So they took a shed, a gardener's shed, and they made that into a makeshift creche, and they made a swing out of tires, rubber tires. And that was the first creche in ISRO, and now it has creches everywhere.
That's true to the way ISRO has done a lot of its work,
Yeah.
Rockets in the back of cycles being pushed down
Yes.
in the 70s,
Yes.
and then something like this as well. Another part of your book which I found interesting was a reference to how a woman scientist actually preferred not to get into Infosys, but preferred to get into ISRO.
Yeah.
So it's a preferred option increasingly. It's aspirational.
Yeah. See, there are two answers to that. One is that one of the scientists, younger scientists, was honest enough to say, but the Sixth Pay Commission now gives us fairly decent money, which was nice. It does compared to what it was earlier. And the other thing, which is across the board, I would say, all 21 scientists I interviewed, pride in the work that they do. And this is something. People in the media, we're really skeptical if someone says, I'm so very proud because I'm doing work for the nation. But in this case, number one, it is work for the nation. And number two, the way that all of them felt that, said it, displayed it, I think that was a very, very, that's what tipped the balance for them, that let's choose ISRO instead of Infosys or Wipro or any of these.
So let me ask you something, Minnie, away from stories about women, though it's obviously part of it. This media gaze, which a few of us have put on them, the fact that you've got the Prime Minister hugging the ISRO chairman, sort of watching every moment of successful missions and missions which don't work out, having to confront a media which wants an instant answer on situation. These are scientists who aren't typically the best communicators.
Absolutely.
I don't believe ISRO still are very good communicators
They're
right
not.
now.
They're not.
Right? Is this a problem that they need to fix?
Absolutely.
But then that can't be, because the messaging in our country is such that it's associated with nationalism, hyperbole, national achievement, pride, sending a message to the neighbors, which is not what scientists do.
Not at all.
Do science.
Not at all. And before the Mangalyaan picture as you know now, administrative women. Before that picture, did anybody ever know what an ISRO woman scientist looked like, or even a male scientist for that matter? ISRO doesn't share it. It's only now. I don't want to get political, but it's only now that this whole gaze, and it's like a torch that you throw on, and they're not used to it. They don't ask for it. They don't want it. I'm talking of the women here, not anybody else.
Sure.
And they said, so what's the fuss about? We're just doing our work. So then I would counter them and say that because people don't know about the work that you do, if more people know, and especially a whole generation, the next generation, which is, wants to do STEM and has been told through society, family, conditioning, science is not for girls, and what will happen to the mommy track when you sort of finish your the peak 40s, for instance, is the mommy track for the women scientists. The male scientists are making great strides. So that people are discouraged, girls are discouraged. So I said, the reason I'm doing this book, and that really is that here are visible role models. They are icons. So, just to tell people, even those in remote areas, in much lesser known towns and cities, 2-tier cities. A lot of these women come from 2-tier cities. They're not Delhi or metro or, these kind of things. They're small, some from villages. So it was to tell them that here are the women and they've done it, and so can you.
Yeah. Yes, please go right ahead.
I was a little disturbed by one statement you made, Vinny, about the leaking pipe syndrome, where you said that a lot of the women don't reach the top because they get into this mommy track, or they think that's what they should do. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's a conditioning which makes them believe that's what they should do. Now, this doesn't only happen in science. It happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. Women feel guilty about leaving children behind at home. They take a break, and then society doesn't want to take them back. So, has there been any case, I don't remember, I have read your book, where a scientist, a woman scientist, has had to take a break or maybe take a a gap and go back and found, because they did say yes, maternity does affect us, right? They said it does affect our promotions in some cases. So can you talk about that?
Case, I don't have a case because among these women that doesn't seem to have happened. But in science, the Department of Science and Technology has a program. So up to women up to the age of 55 can actually avail of that. It's called break from the break. So when you come back from the break, you know in that much time you do get extra monetary benefits. But it didn't apply to these women. They didn't.
There was this one very interesting example you gave of an ISRO scientist who used to ensure that she came home and cooked a damn good meal for her kids and her
then go
husband.
back.
And her husband wasn't typically happy about cooking the meal. He'd much rather go out elsewhere. But there was a sharing of responsibilities.
Yes, yes.
He gave up some trek of his or whatever,
Yeah.
and he came back.
Nandini,
Or he
that's
was,
Nandini.
right?
Yeah.
And when he realized that, look, there's a larger good over here. There's a larger sort of mission over here that extends beyond this house.
No, true. There's several instances like that. Several instances.
Of families coming together.
Yeah.
Super. Well, that just gives you a small sample, really, of the role of women. But I think ISRO as an organization is fantastic. What we're going to see in the months and the years ahead, an Indian manned space station, Indian astronauts called Vyomnauts in space, the entire excitement around who they're going to be. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have an Indian woman among those who are the first Vyomnauts in space?
Yeah.
That's something very likely to happen. And the future of deep space, of collaboration, of certainly another return to the moon in the future, not right now, they're still trying to figure things out, and Mars, of course, and the fact that Mangalyaan has done so remarkably well.
This is going to be Mangalyaan
Is
2
it
also.
still sending images?
Yeah, absolutely.
How many years past it's
It's
designed?
2014. It was supposed to last for about 6 months, and this is this is sixth. 6 years. 6 years, and has got enough fuel to go on for another. I don't know. They didn't put a date on it, but they said we've got lots of fuel left.
And that's Indian engineering. I mean,
Yeah.
it's made in India, 100% done by our scientists,
Totally.
and at a fraction of the cost of the others. So if there are questions at this stage, I've seen you, ma'am. go right ahead. Yes.
Yeah.
Hi.
There's just 1 second before the question. I'm just answering something that Satya said. The difference in the leaky pipeline syndrome and the mommy track and all with science is that in science the rigor involved is much more. The years involved are much more. So in fact, there's one scientist who has mentioned there that in our work you have to find a niche, something that people have not done before, and then pursue that with rigor, irrespective of whether it will put you on a promotion track quickly or not. And she openly said that if I had left what I was doing and pursued another program, which was, they say, an application program, your disaster management or any of these things, I would have risen faster. But I wanted to do this because it was something which was not done before, and so I pursued it with rigor. And she was completely not bothered by the fact that she hadn't reached where she otherwise would have. So yeah, that's the scientific rigor involved.
Go ahead, ma'am, with your question.
Yeah, thank you. Brilliant session. Why Vyomanaut and not Womanaut?
So women knots will be Vyom knots. Vyom refers to the men and the women. How did that word Vyom knot get decided on?
Absolutely no idea.
It's not easy to sort of say. I mean,
No,
it could have been
no.
easier. Or,
And I actually wish that.
but
there
it's
wasn't-
official, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
It is official, is what I'm told.
I assume.
So our astronauts will be known Vyom knots, men and women.
I'm not so sure I like that. It has a very strange touch.
Just we'll pass the mic on.
Doesn't sound nice. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a friend called Vyoma, and apparently Vyoma in Hindi and Sanskrit means the sky or heaven. So I'm guessing that's why it's Vyoma now.
Sure. Anybody?
Then because in the Mangalyaan women, they did perform roles which were equal to the men. So I wanted to know more about it. Otherwise, there was no reason for singling them out. Nobody had ever done anything on women scientists before. Strangely enough. So.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am, in the back. You've raised your hand. Yeah. Go ahead. Can you just stand up? We can barely see you. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. You're a student here.
Yeah, that's nice.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, my question to you is that whenever a woman tries to do something in any field, be it in the space missions or aeronautics or anything, there's a lot of pressure from the society, a lot of pressure from the family. And a time comes when she's not actually emotionally so strong to handle everything. So how can a woman tackle all this?
What a wonderful question.
Yeah, kind of put me on the spot here. See, the conditioning, as I said earlier, begins right from home. Okay, it begins from your father and mother. It begins from mother expecting the daughter to lay the table and not asking the son to do it because he's studying or whatever. So it has to be fought right then. When you have a curriculum in a textbook, the woman is shown as a nurse. The doctor is shown as a man. Okay, so when you start realizing right from the beginning that kind of subconscious bullying that happens, maths is not for girls, science is not for girls. At that time, you have to start tackling so that by the time you actually do medicine or physics or whatever it is that you want to do, you will have got the strength. I don't think emotion is not a word that I'm very comfortable with. At the end of the day, for these ISRO women also, it is their work, it is the science, and it is that which counts. Not the emotions, not whether they got tears in their eyes when they actually saw the Mars orbiter inside the thing, and they were emotional. But that's not important. What is important is the work. So you fight it right from the beginning.
I have to have the last word on this. No, to answer your question, dear student, I have realized that if there is communication, whether it's with a parent or with a spouse or with a child, you see, mothers sometimes have to leave their children and go to work. If they say, you have to be quiet, I'm going to work, the child will scream loud. But if it says, look, I'm going to work, and you will be proud of me because everybody will say, wow, what a lovely mother, she's able to do all these wonderful things, the child will feel proud. So it's a question of communication, it's a question of getting them on your side. And not saying, I'm doing this to defy you, I'm just doing it because that's something I also want to do, just like you want to do what you want to do. I think that's the answer.
Is there any one last final question on... Yeah, go right ahead, sir. Last one and then we'll end it, I promise. We still have 2 minutes.
When we talk about the high sciences, like in the medical profession, I see very less of our women colleagues opting for the orthopedics branch, very less of them opting for the neurosurgery.
So, your question?
My question is, still the conditioning that you say, the preconditioning of the mind, does that take place even at such a higher level? Like, आपने जैसे इसरो में इतने साइंटिस्ट को इंटरव्यू किया, they are also doing this.
They had already finished their struggle, and that's why they're working at.
They're already conditioned to
it. Yeah.
But my query is there any other factor other than the preconditioning by the family or the society that stops our young women and colleagues from opting